And I'm here for another live stream back in sunny Puerto Rico, um, at least for a couple of weeks. Well, actually, for a week, and then going to go to Florida for a few days, and then back in Puerto Rico for a few days, and then we'll be um, probably going back to the other side of the world where I'll be streaming at night again. But at least for a few weeks, I'll be streaming in the daytime outside. Um, all right, so I'm not sure. The lighting is not great, probably, but the sun's overhead. Um, all right, so we'll just jump in. I just wanted to let people know that I don't know if I actually want to let people know anything. All right, we'll just jump into the questions. Hey, so the first question is: I've got respiratory issues, and I got one shot only. I was talking to a girl the other day who has a big family, and 80% of them got cancer now, or the cancer was gone and came back. Um, wow, this is from Rob Kloss. So yeah, it seems like it's more of a comment. It's pretty scary. Certainly, I know people who had cancer before and it came back unexpectedly. So it does seem like the spike protein triggers cancer resurgence. It can certainly trigger respiratory issues. It doesn't necessarily take more than one shot to get sick. Um, if you look at Mark Girardot's Substack or the new book that he just published called The Needle's Secret, he has a very compelling theory as to why not just these shots, but all shots of vaccine shots can cause significant damage to tissues in a somewhat random way, in a somewhat random fashion, depending on where the bulk of the shot ends up, which vascular bed it ends up in. So it can damage these shots, vaccine shots in general, can damage vascular beds by transfection. So transfection means whether it's an inactivated virus or it's an mRNA shot or whatever it is, it can be a traditional vaccine, it can be an mRNA vaccine. It gets taken up by the cell walls in the vasculature, and reprograms those cells. Just this is how regular viruses work. This is also how mRNA works, and then those cells display viral proteins, and the immune system comes and destroys them. So if you do that in a vascular bed, you're going to cause significant damage to the vasculature, which will cause damage to that whatever organ that ends up being in. So if that happens in your lungs, you'll have damage to the vascular beds in the lungs. It can cause persistent damage when those beds have trouble healing. And at least Mark Girardot's theory is that the best approach, perhaps the cheapest approach, is to just stimulate stem cell production to come and heal those vascular beds. So the way you do that is with oxygen therapy. You breathe in pure oxygen, whether in a hyperbaric chamber or just sitting in your at regular pressure, atmospheric pressure at home with an oxygen concentrator, and breathe it for an hour to a day for 3 to 4 months, and then a lot of people find that helps them to get better from that vascular damage that happened. And of course, there are a lot of other things that you can do. The microclots will prevent those vascular beds from being able to heal, so addressing the microclots can help. And oftentimes, there's various things you can inhaled treatments using nebulizers that can help with breathing problems. And sometimes it's more of a matter of retraining the brain to breathe properly. And your body heals naturally over time as long as there's not something actively damaging it. And your body, if there is something actively damaging your body, it will usually get rid of that thing over time as well. And then the people who still don't get better, who remain chronically ill, they seem to have some kind of like a PTSD or like a rewiring or like a rewriting, faulty software essentially, and not so much faulty hardware. And so the software, which is the nervous system, needs to be rewritten, retrained, and that can be done with mind-body protocols, as well as certain devices can help. Like I recently came across a device that was approved by the FDA last year for tinnitus, and it provides these tickling sensations on your tongue that help to refocus your brain away from tinnitus. So people will become so focused on the thing that's bothering them, that they're basically strengthening that thing itself. So what you pay attention to, those pathways get laid down stronger. So whatever you pay attention to, it becomes easier and easier to pay attention to the same thing in the future. And so for example, tinnitus, let's just take tinnitus as an example. Even if there was some physical damage to some, of the little sensors in your ears, and so they're constantly sending a signal, right, to your brain that there's a sound, even though there is no sound. It's a constant signal, right? Your brain should eventually just start to ignore it, right? Constant signal, that doesn't make any sense. So if you constantly smell the same thing, so if you walk into like a place where there's really bad smell, eventually you'll stop smelling it, right? If the intensity and the quality remains the same over time, your nose is just like, well, that's just like the background environment now, right? There's nothing here important. There's nothing to notice. It's always there. Nothing's changing. So change is usually what gets noticed. And the same thing would happen with physical sensations, neurological stimulations, or whatever. So there's something wrong when there's a chronic pain that's just not going away, despite nothing changing, or chronic tinnitus or some sort of chronic issue that's bothering you. And, the issue there is that you need to retrain your nervous system to ignore that signal, right? That signal is not helping you. There's no reason to be stimulating that signal anymore. And so it's possible to turn it off in different ways. Michelle says, will my sense of smell and taste ever come back? They can come back, so again, there could be a mix of physical damage and kind of like neurological, kind of like the processing of the signals could be damaged. So if we think of it in the metaphor of like computer hardware and software, even though it's a very imperfect metaphor, it could be a hardware problem or a software problem or a mixture of both. Regardless of what it is, if the hardware is damaged, you can fix that. If the software is damaged, you can fix that. And I mean, you can even rewire the brain. I remember I was looking back at this interview I did with Dr. Mubin years ago, and he was mentioning a study where where somebody who was blind, they hooked up like a camera to his tongue, and so like the signals from the camera, what the camera was seeing was transmitted to his tongue, and he was able to rewire his visual centers to take the electrical inputs coming from the camera onto his tongue and send it to the visual cortex and interpret it and be able to understand what the camera was seeing based on the signals going to his tongue. So the brain is incredibly capable of, it's incredibly flexible. It's capable of an incredible amount of flexibility, rewiring things and recovering them. So, so I don't think that the spike protein and the kind of damage that's happening to people's smell and taste is irrecoverable. It's not like somebody who's blind where you can't recover the optic nerve. So it is possible to rebuild it and also to rewire it if the wiring has become damaged. So in most cases, it's going to be possible to recover. So the key is to stop the ongoing damage, if there is any. Stop this, get rid of the spike protein, get rid of the microclots, allow the nerve to heal. If there is nerve damage, even that can heal. It just takes longer, right? So nerves are very slow growing. It could take 6 to 12 months. Once you stop damaging the tissue, depending on which tissue it is, it will take a longer or shorter amount of time to heal. And some tissues, like, if you haven't used them for a while, you're going to have to do some sort of training process to tell your brain and the tissue that, hey, I need you to wake up. I need you to start working again. So you got to sit there and try to smell stuff, right? Try to taste things. So that whole smell and taste training thing, it has a place. But the more important thing is to first clear the way for that to work, right? So you want to get rid of what's actively damaging. You want to put out the fire. And it's not just the spike protein. This is important. I mean, I keep coming back to this idea that it's not the final straw that's always the most important to remove. So the last straw that breaks the camel's back is perhaps the spike protein. But there's a lot of other straws on there, right, that contributed to the problem, and they also have to be removed. So there's a lot of lifestyle work that most people need to do, and probably across the board, the biggest thing is just that most people, maybe not most people, but a lot of people, it seems to be a societal issue, don't rest enough, and they think that they're relaxing and they're not, right? So they're like, oh, I turn on the TV or Netflix or go onto my phone to relax. It's not relaxing. Your body doesn't think it's relaxing. Your mind doesn't think it's relaxing. So relaxation and rest, for true relaxation and rest, you have to turn things off and stop consuming, right? So there's one mode of being where you consume information and food and light and thoughts and conversation, and you're consuming things, right? You're consuming. And the other mode is the restful mode, where you're not consuming, where you shut off your brain, you stop thinking, right? You can call it meditation or prayer or just like zoning out or sleep or whatever you want, but they're all basically restful, and you need to balance these two modes of being. Otherwise, you won't be healthy. So you need both of them. And in order for the active consumption mode to work properly and to bear fruit, you need the restful side of it, right? So sleep and rest will help you to digest properly the things that you have consumed during the day. So this, people ignore this, and they think that it's not important because they were a lot more resilient when they were younger and they didn't need to worry so much about it. But they've been drawing down what I call their health savings account most of their life, and with this incorrect approach to living. And eventually you run out of that resilience and you start to notice problems. Tamissa Mathewson says, can you have ALS when all the tests from neurology don't show anything, but you have muscle twitching all over and loss? Or is there a medication to slow loss down if it's Guillain-Barré from COVID or the shot? So you can have, it's possible. So one of the issues with testing is that you can have something that looks similar, and yet the underlying cause of it could be different, but perhaps the deeper meaning is the same, right? So somebody has, you could label somebody chronic fatigue syndrome, or you could label them Lyme disease or mold toxicity or EBV, reactivation, or long COVID or hypothyroid or whatever, right? And all of those 5, 6, 7 labels could have the same presentation, the same symptoms, same symptomatology. And the deeper meaning might be the same for all of those 6, 7 people, right? Their body is trying to send them the same message. Maybe it's trying to send them the message to slow down. You need to spend more time in recovery mode. You need to, sleep better. You need to rest more. You need to turn off the phone. You need to turn things off, right? Whatever. Right, that could be the underlying message that's trying to be sent by your body, or maybe not. But the point is that your body is using different mechanisms to send that message, and so you could have something that looks just like Parkinson's, and all the tests don't seem to show Parkinson's, right? Or you could have something that looks just like ALS, and all the tests don't seem to show it, but the underlying issue could be very, very similar. So I think it's, people get too hung up on tests. There's no perfect tests, right? There's no perfect test for Parkinson's, for example. It's like, it's just not available, right? So it's a matter of, you look at the person and you try to figure out, why are they expressing these symptoms, regardless of what the label is. What are the underlying possible causes of these symptoms? Then you address those causes. And this is, you might call it a functional medicine approach or a natural approach, whatever you want to call it. The labels are less important than the, degree of competency of the person who is seeing you and helping you. So let me just change my screen. It's getting pretty bright here now. So And the other important thing here is that, the same mixture of ingredients, we're most of us are exposed to very similar kind of disease causing ingredients from our lifestyle and our environment. And they express themselves in different ways in different people. So the thing that causes ALS in one person might cause Parkinson's in somebody else, it might cause diabetes in somebody else, and it might cause, kidney disease in the fourth person. And yet it's like the same underlying causes. And so when you stop worrying so much about what the manifestation is and start to consider, what could I be doing wrong, or what could I be exposed to? What am I missing in terms of nutrients? And what am I exposing myself to in terms of toxins that I can address? Because all disease, regardless, it just comes down to an interplay between your own predispositions, what you bring to the world, right? Your own weak points, in your genetics, your biochemistry, your psyche, etc., your life history, what you bring to the table, and then that the interplay between that and toxins in all their different forms and nutrients in all their different forms. So you're going to have some nutrient deficiencies, some amount of toxins that need to be removed, and some things that you bring to the table. You It's difficult to change what you bring to the table, right? But it's easy to change what you decide to do, right? And what you expose yourself to, and doing certain things to help detox or remove the toxins that you may not be able to control. And then doing certain things like sitting outside, and getting sun, soaking up sun, which is extremely important. And just no one really fully understands the power of sunlight on our biology, and the harmful effect of unnatural light during the day and at night, but especially at night. Julia says, I have had 2+ years of burning intercostal pain, so between the ribs, that starts at the sternum and will wrap all the way around to my back whenever I'm standing or walking, or with prolonged talking and singing. I haven't found anyone else with this symptom or doctors who know what is causing it. It started just days after recovering from COVID. Okay, yeah. So it sounds like something neurological. It could also be, just inflammation in general. But the nerves, the sensory nerves, start here and come this way. But I mean, that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean it's not a sensory nerve. You could have the sensation could be going in the opposite direction as well, just the way that you're feeling it, right? It's not necessary that it has to begin here and radiate this way. It could start here and radiate that way. So it's very likely neuropathy, a nerve inflammation, from the sound of it. So, and why is that? I'd have to talk to you, but it's something related to Hey everyone, overheating problem as usual. Um, yeah, so my phone finally came back, but I'm going to use my computer in the shade now. Whoops, I'm also on my phone. Hold on a second, let me turn off the phone one. I'm also on the phone. Okay, so where was I? Let me just pop up the question. Okay, so we were talking about the burning intercostal pain and the fact that it's probably neuropathy, nerve pain. The nerves that there's a nerve and a artery and a vein that travel along each rib, and so it could certainly be a vasculopathy affecting the nerve because there's a neurovascular bundle. It's the nerve, artery, and vein all very close together. So if the arteries are inflamed, they have microclots, they have some inflammation that can, affect the nerve, which is very close by. So it's possible that that's the case. And again, why is it just affecting that particular spot? It's not. That's the simple answer. It's affecting everything. So you have a systemic problem, but for whatever reason, and it could be a psychological reason, that you are particularly prone to feeling it in that particular spot. So there could be a mind-body reason behind why you're sensing it in this particular area. Or it could just be that that's kind of a weak spot in your makeup, and other parts of your body, other neurovascular bundles, other areas are just more resistant to experiencing that problem. And the problem would have to get worse for you to experience it in other places. So regardless, you address the root cause issues, you detox from the spike, get rid of the microclots, go on an anti-inflammatory diet, and you should be fine. Ivermectin and low-dose naltrexone can help a lot. And, if you want really deep healing, then you have to address mind-body issues, beliefs, and emotions, and intimacy, and all of that stuff as well, to figure out why there's this particular symptom at this particular time. Bronia says weight loss and food intolerance. I need help. Thank you. And I'm assuming you've lost weight and you have an intolerance to food. So, the typical approach is to remove all those foods that you're intolerant to for 6 to 12 months, and even remove other foods that you don't realize you're not tolerating, and go on a very kind of restricted dietary regimen for 6 to 12 months, and then give your body a chance to kind of reset. I'd have to talk to you to get the exact details, right? Like, have you actually lost too much weight? Are you at an unhealthy, very, very low weight? It's possible you're not. People think that they need more weight than they actually do, just because they're so used to seeing fat people or overweight people, or just like, as they call them over, like the Indian subcontinent, they call people healthy when they're a little bit chunky. So almost everyone is overweight in the United States. So we've become used to something that's not actually normal. And when we see somebody who's normal, or we even see ourselves looking actually normal, we think that we're like cachectic, or, we look like a cancer patient. It's not actually necessarily true. But it's possible, so I don't know. I need to know the details. But assuming that you're actually underweight, then we'd have to be focusing on what you need to eat. But it's not always important to regain the weight immediately, right? So there might be something more important to focus on. So it all depends on the details. What's the first thing? And sometimes there's an order of operations required, just like a math problem, where they have all like viral math problems on YouTube and other places, where it's like different people get different answers because they're doing it in a different order. They're there's like multiplication and division and there's parentheses and all this stuff, and people are like, oh no, it's 16, it's 16, and other people are like, no, you forgot the order, that you're supposed to do those things in. So there's an order of operations for healing as well, and you can't always focus on everything all at once, and sometimes you need to focus on a particular thing first and then you focus on other things. So you may have to focus on detox first, and in which case you may not be able to address the weight loss immediately. So it needs, the best way to approach any health problem is not with a one size fits all protocol. It's with a deeply customized protocol specific to you and your own situation that takes into account everything, right? Including your, very personal things, your thoughts and your feelings, your emotions, and where you've come from, and your experiences during your life, and all of these things, along with the physical issues, and addresses all of those at the same time. Deanna Braun says, my husband needs help to stop tinnitus also. So there's, what's the name of that? It's not a cheap device. It's like $3,000 or $4,000, and it works great for some people. Doesn't seem to work that great for other people. But the idea behind it is something that you can do yourself, right? Like the fact that it works, it points at something deeper. It's linear, Lenire. I tweeted about it. Tickle your tongue to treat tinnitus. But it's basically a matter of retraining your brain. So it is possible, and there are a lot of different mind-body approaches that can work for retraining the brain, not just to stop hearing tinnitus, but to stop feeling chronic pain, to stop being depressed, anxious, to stop feeling fatigued. Really, whatever symptom you have, it can be, to a great degree dealt with using mind-body approaches. So lightning process is one. The Curable app. A lot of the mind-body approaches focus on chronic pain, but it can be used for any symptom, any disease, and it can be very helpful. And the biggest stumbling block is just not believing that it works, right? That's one of the main things that you have to overcome, this belief that your mind is not able to overcome chronic disease and illness. So you just have to learn more about the placebo effect, the belief effect, and the power of the mind over the body, and keep learning about it until you become deeply convinced of its reality. And the more you become convinced of that reality, the more effectively you'll be able to rid yourself of all manner of health problems. Another, a great book on this topic is Healing Beyond Pills and Potions. Really, really worth buying and reading. Kent says medications no longer work, i.e. blood pressure meds no longer have any effect, painkillers do nothing, I have severe muscle cramping. This is something that I try to warn people against, that the fundamental approach of modern medicine is just flawed. It's a Band-Aid approach. The Band-Aid over a festering wound will always lead to that wound getting worse and worse over time. You have whatever metaphor you want to use, a fire or an infected wound or whatever, the thing will keep getting worse unless you go to the root cause. In case of an infected wound, you kill the bacteria, but then you can go even deeper than that. Like, why were you prone to getting infected by that bacteria, regardless of the fact that you had a cut or whatever? Most people who have a cut don't end up getting infected with bacteria. They rinse it out and they cover it up and it heals on its own, right? So they've got the right lifestyle, the right nutrients, not too many toxins, and their body's working normally. It's able to heal normally. And other people, like a diabetic who has microvascular disease and issues, and they are more prone to getting infections and their immune system shot, and for a lot of different reasons. So you got to go to the root cause and not just stop at the superficial level of, oh, well, there's a bacteria there, so if I kill the bacteria, then the wound will heal. Yeah, maybe, and maybe not. Maybe still there's not enough blood supply to the wound. There's not enough etc. There's a lot of other issues, and you have to address those. And then you have to ask, well, what's beneath those? What's deeper than those? And you have to keep going until you get to the real root causes, the taproot, the big main root. It may not always just be one, but the deepest roots. You got to uproot this thing from the bottom. And so, blood pressure medication, pain medication, these things are the most obvious examples of the wrong approach to those problems, because they're not dealing with the underlying causes. So those causes continue to get worse. They're still there, and your body becomes more and more resistant to the suppressive effects of the blood pressure medication and the painkillers. So it seems like it's a simple idea, and yet most people, if they don't think about it for a while, they don't really deeply get it, because it applies to everything. It applies to all of modern medicine. Everything that we're doing in modern medicine is this same fundamentally flawed approach. I would even say that a lot of the natural medicine, right, seemingly natural medicine approaches are also the same fundamentally flawed approach. They're not going all the way to the deepest causes. So you got to go to the deeper causes and figure out what's causing your high blood pressure and and part of that, there's a vicious cycle where the blood pressure medicine itself is causing part of the high blood pressure, and the painkillers themselves are causing some of the pain. So you got to taper off of those things, get back to the baseline signal that your body was trying to send you based on the causes that were there. So your body was in discomfort or pain and sending you a message based on certain causes that were there, but you've amplified the message by trying to suppress it, right? Your body started to scream when it was just shouting or raising its voice a little bit, right, before, or even just tapping you on the shoulder before, and now it's screaming because it's trying to overcome the effect of you putting your hands over your ears and sticking your head in the ground or whatever. So again, not a lot to go on here, but this is certainly, it's not even that hard to treat. It's easy to treat once you start to do the right things. It's a lot of lifestyle, a lot of beliefs involved, and a lot of oftentimes emotional stuff involved at the deepest roots. Colleen says, I believe I have MCAS from COVID. My tryptase is normal, but I have all the symptoms. What medications do you recommend to help if one does have MCAS? Currently taking Allegra and Pepsid. If I miss a dose, I feel horrible. Again, it's the fundamentally flawed approach. If that's the only thing you're willing to do, maybe the best case scenario is that you cover up the symptoms long enough that your body takes care of the underlying problem. So that does happen frequently. And sometimes it doesn't work out that well. But maybe 80-90% of the time, people, their body is getting rid of the underlying problem gradually over time. It's weeding out the spike protein. It's eliminating the microclots. It's just happening kind of slowly. It might take 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And so you're covering up the symptoms, with Allegra and Pepsid meanwhile. And then after 3 months or 6 months, you're able to taper off, and you feel as though the Allegra and Pepsid cured you, and they didn't. They just covered up the symptoms until your body was able to deal with the underlying problem. So it is possible that you're doing both, covering up the symptoms and helping your body deal with the underlying problem. This was, I guess, my initial theory of why things got better with long COVID. But I think it was a flawed understanding of nature and, not giving the body's wisdom its due. So I think it's wrong to think your body's doing the wrong thing. I don't think that's the right lens to look at things through. Your body is doing the right thing by you, and it's doing the best possible thing that it can do to protect you as much as possible from the underlying issue that's harming you. And so it's possible that preventing that from happening itself will keep you sick longer than if you just allow it to happen. So yeah, so what do you do? the MCAS and allergic disorders, these are probably best approached from the perspective of neural retraining, right? Mind-body medicine and neural retraining, because there's no good reason for your body to be reacting to things that it shouldn't react to. And it's really a mystery, even to the experts in MCAS, why it's doing that, right? And you can certainly overcome MCAS with mind-body approaches. The other way of doing it that seems to work for a lot of people is to really eliminate all the different triggers, change the diet, boost your body's ability to kind of normalize the situation by focusing on optimizing diet, lifestyle, eliminating toxins, dealing with spike protein, all of this stuff, right? So that can certainly help, but you can kind of bypass a lot of difficulty and just kind of jump to the head of the line if you go straight to mind body medicine in the beginning and start to retrain your brain so that it's not reacting to things that are not harmful in the environment. And certainly some of the herbal things I do think help to address underlying problems at the same time as making you feel better, unlike Allegra and Pepcid, perhaps. So Nigella sativa, from theblessedseed.com in the UK, that should be spread out like 4 or 5 times a day. You don't want to take a giant dose all at once. It's pretty strong stuff. It can annoy you. It can cause some reflux, so you got to take low doses multiple times throughout the day. Try to aim, titrate up to 80 milligrams per kilogram in a day, but not all at once. Curcumin, quercetin, and these kind of herbal things can be very helpful for helping to heal from that and also addressing underlying root cause issues. So they work in a number of ways. Like they boost the body's ability to deal with stressful situations that it's exposed to. They help eliminate spike protein, and they also have an antihistamine effect. So those can be helpful substances to use instead of the Allegra and the Pepcid. I would start with the herbal treatments, mind body medicine, herbal treatments, and diet lifestyle stuff. Don Hagen says, I've had COVID vaccine injuries since August of 2022. I was better for a while when I was on ivermectin, bromelain, nattokinase, quercetin, resveratrol, turmeric, and a nicotine patch and prednisone. Since ivermectin and prednisone treatment stopped, the pain has returned. I need help. So one approach is to go back on ivermectin. I wouldn't be on prednisone for a really long period of time. I think that's not a good approach. You need to taper off of that, and you need to address the underlying root cause. So you may not have properly addressed the underlying root cause, and again, you may have addressed the final straw, the spike protein, as possible, and yet once things have broken down, right? Like the metaphor is really good, right? Like you keep dropping straws on a camel's back, and eventually the last straw is what breaks the back, right? But just removing the last straw is not enough to get up again, right? You got to heal the back. You got to remove all the straws and send the camel to rehab, right? So that's the same thing with your body. You got to get rid of all the straws, all the lifestyle straws, and all the stressors and all the toxins, and just fix everything. And that requires changing your beliefs, right? People just don't believe that, sunlight could be that important. They just don't believe that intimacy could possibly be that important. They just don't believe that sleep could be that important. Well, I'm here to tell you it is that important. It's more important than that, right? So it may be the most important thing. And until you accept it, you just may not get better, right? So the sooner you accept it, the better it'll be. So you got to accept that there's a certain environment for optimal health, and if you're not in that environment, you won't be optimally healthy. And there's only so many things that can cause illness, and they are all lumped into 2 categories: toxins and nutrients, right? That's all there is. We live in a rational universe. It's cause and effect, right? It's not mysterious. You got to let go of this lie that we've all been told, that from mainstream medicine and even sometimes alternative medicine, though, we just don't know. We just don't know what it is. We do know what it is. We know what it is. It's the toxins and the lack of nutrients. And it's just that there's some things people that are toxins and people don't think they are. And there's some things that are nutrients and people don't think they are. And you're not getting those things, or you're getting too much of the toxins, right? You're getting too much of the toxins, not enough of the nutrients. That's it. That's the long and short of it. So what those things are for you specifically, I don't know. I mean, I can guess because they're the same for most people in the West, but there may be some specific things for you, and there might be beliefs in there, the wrong beliefs having a really powerful nocebo effect, and there might be some emotions and some lack of intimacy, and those could be the primary problems, not secondary or tertiary or quaternary. They could be primary, and they need to be dealt with. Could be a relationship issue. Everything is connected, right? And the rest of this stuff, they should be used as tools to help you get on the right track, but you can't rely on ivermectin and prednisone forever. If you do that, you will have problems, right? If you don't deal with the underlying cause and just say, okay, ivermectin and prednisone keep me feeling good, that is a Band-Aid approach. It's not a root cause approach, right? If it's a root cause approach, eventually you can stop taking it. You don't have to keep taking it once it's dealt with the root cause. So again, I don't know specifically for you. Maybe you just need more ivermectin for longer. Maybe you need to deal with microclots. You need to try harder to deal with them. Maybe you need to take some of these things for longer. Maybe you need, to detox better. Maybe there's some toxin that you haven't detoxed from. Maybe you need to get rid of some heavy metals. Maybe you need some more chlorella. I don't know. And maybe you just need some more sunlight and to sleep better. And while doing these other things to give your body a chance to deeply heal. But yeah, shutting off your immune system with prednisone is not a long-term solution to anything. It's going to lead to problems. It will cause as many problems as it solves, at least, if not more. Diane Savino says, I have terrible constipation after COVID, and I don't know how to alleviate it without using medical laxatives. How can this be fixed? Try Triphala. Start at a low dose and gradually titrate up and take as much as you need. So TRIPHALA is where I would start with constipation, but also address your diet and lifestyle and stress and all this other stuff, right, that's related to your bowel function. And that's the place to start. So obviously what you eat is going to have an effect on your bowel function, and you might need some probiotic foods, but this can get a little bit tricky. You might need some enemas initially. And some people, they have a lot of trouble and they need to go to like a stool transplant or something, right? So I don't know, the devil's in the details, right? So it's hard to say exactly. Kathy says, I'm just wondering if there have been any reports or studies about brain tumors like meningioma as a result of COVID and or due to remdesivir. So I'm not aware. I mean, anyone can go to PubMed and look up meningioma. There was something on X. I don't think it was a meningioma, but some rare. I think it was a blood cancer linked to the shots recently. I don't think it's that important to ask this kind of question. If somebody develops a brain tumor after having COVID or remdesivir, those things are probably contributory, and you don't need to prove them. So I would not worry so much about seeing that itself is a case report, right? That is the report that should be submitted, right? And written up and look, this person was fine and then they got COVID or they got the shot and now they have a tumor, right? that's a case report itself. You don't need any other case report. Like, 100 other case reports aren't going to help. You see that situation, that case itself has enough information in it to suggest that you need to focus on treating spike protein and as part of the protocol to treating that cancer. Amy says, I keep gaining weight no matter what I do. I have started Wegovy. I would not do Wegovy. Have you heard of any issues with Wegovy and long COVID? So Wegovy is definitely going to cause problems for people in the future. That's what I can say. Again, it's not addressing underlying root cause issue. Your food is rotting in your stomach instead of continuing down the pathway of digestion. That's going to cause a lot of stress to the stomach. Your pancreas is going to be constantly stimulated to release, enzymes, as well as your gallbladder, while it's because the food is like right about to come. But it's not coming, but it's right about to come. So, all the rest of your digestive pathways are like just overworked. So no surprise that, pancreatic cancer and other problems come from the use of Wegovy. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Just because, the signal doesn't seem to be that strong, it doesn't matter. It's going to cause some other problem in some other people. And the cancer signal will probably get stronger and stronger the longer people are on it. I mean, they just haven't been on it that long, these kind of drugs. Yeah, I don't know. Somebody here said, Mr. X says it will wreck your microbiome. I don't know if he's talking about Wegovy or something else, but I agree. It will wreck your microbiome, and it's just going to wreck a lot of things, right? It's like a wrecking ball, and it's just not worth it for weight loss to take a wrecking ball to all kinds of other body systems. It's just extremely unnatural the way that it works, and it's just the same fundamentally flawed approach of modern medicine. The only reason we pursue it is because it makes a lot of money for pharmaceutical companies. So you need to go down to the underlying root cause issues and address them. Maybe it's spike, maybe it's some other toxins that are making you hold on to weight. It's probably stress and poor sleep and not a bad lighting environment. Those are probably big contributors, and people just don't realize how important those things are. The other thing that can make a huge difference but can take like 4 or 5 months to really start to notice the effects of stopping it is vegetable seed oils. And you got to just quit completely, right? Don't expose yourself to any of them. Don't eat out ever again. Don't eat boxed foods. No vegetable oils ever again. And after 3 to 6 months, you'll find that your weight just starts to come down naturally. That plus modern wheat, just get rid of it. It's not good for you. It's very inflammatory, too much gluten. If you can't avoid grains initially, I would go AIP or something else, a little bit more drastic elimination diet in the beginning just to get the ball rolling. But you could, if you really can't do that, then you might just eliminate modern wheat and switch to a safer wheat like einkorn or spelt or Kemet. So spelt and einkorn are pretty easily available in the U.S. nowadays. But there's a lot of other grains, that have no gluten, which might be safer initially. I'm not saying that they have to be used forever, but there's different ways of doing it, and it's certainly possible to lose weight. It's not about exercise. It's about what you eat, about stress, and about sleep and light environment. Those are the most important things, plus toxins, eliminating the toxins. And there could be some emotional issues too. So that can be a really big part of it, especially for women, but men too. So fear and anxiety, stress, disgust with yourself, relationship issues with somebody else who's making you feel bad about your weight, all this stuff, right? I'm not saying that you got to change somebody else. It's all a matter of changing yourself and how you interact with other people in the world around you. But it is certainly possible to gain weight once you address all the underlying root causes, not just the physical causes. Sarah says, how do you treat people who have autoantibodies to GPCR? This is approximately 1/3 of people with long COVID. Don't say LDN, as that's not effective. As it stands, only BC007, which is in clinical trials, will treat it. Yeah, so again, you don't need to take BC007. You don't need 007 to treat antibodies, autoantibodies to anything. So yeah, I don't specifically have a protocol or anything or approach or an herb or um, you know one size fits all approach for anything. And I don't think you need to even check or worry about any biochemical abnormalities or microscopic abnormalities or autoantibodies. You don't need to look for them. You just need to treat this person who's in front of you, and they'll get better, and the autoantibodies will go away. Um, so, and that's assuming the autoantibodies are not good for you, right? So, if they are good for you, then they'll stay. I understand what an autoantibody is. I understand that it's um, it should be something that's attacking your own tissues. But yeah, I think that this approach of like molecular medicine and trying to figure out the microscopic details of everything it's a dead end. It's not going to lead to real healing, right? So you're isolating something to a tremendous degree and not understanding how it connects to everything else, and just saying, okay, we're assuming the body's doing something wrong. It's creating these antibodies to itself, and there's this molecular compound we've discovered that gets rid of that problem. So let's give it. It must be good, right? This is a completely flawed approach, and it will cause negative side effects, right? So whether those side effects show up immediately or after 10 or 15 or 20 years, there will be negative side effects because you're just not you can't hack nature, unfortunately. You have to submit to nature, and you have to do things in a natural way. Otherwise, there will be harm coming out of them. Other than that, there's immunoadsorption, which is expensive, risky, and inaccessible. You can remove any autoantibody with plasmagenation. You can at least thin the herd with plasmagenation. And that's one of the things that people can try. But again, it's also not the ultimate, solution. So it's a way of basically thinning the herd. Whatever toxins are present, it's not going to tell the immune system to stop making that thing. Obviously, it's not going to get rid of the B cells that are trained to produce antibodies. Colleen says, if COVID is indeed viral persistence, what's your recommended treatment to remove it? I just feel like if it were viral persistence, why wouldn't a long course of an antiviral help? So a long course of an antiviral does help, but sometimes you need to increase the dose a lot, right? So you have to titrate up the dose of ivermectin beyond the dose that most people are willing to try, and you need to take it for longer than most people are willing to take it. So you might need to go to 0.4, 0.6, 0.8 milligrams per kilogram. You might need to do it for 3 to 6 months. So curcumin's an antiviral, Nigella sativa is an antiviral, dandelion's an antiviral, ivermectin's an antiviral. All these things are antivirals, right? So they do work, and maybe that's part of the reason why they work. Diego Gaitan says, I've been coughing for 2.5 years after getting COVID in 2021. Any suggestions? Take a look at the blog post I did on chronic coughs. A lot of the chronic coughs are probably, faulty neural pathways. Your body's gotten used to coughing, and it's kind of similar to tinnitus. But it can also be seen as like when you cough, you kind of irritate this area in the throat. It's kind of like scratching an itch, right? But the cough itself worsens that problem. It's kind of like when you get an ant bite. If you don't scratch it, it'll just you just won't be aware of it. It'll heal and it'll go away. But once you start scratching, you can't stop scratching it. So it's the same with a cough. So there's a great YouTube video. Somebody at some university somewhere came up with this method of helping people to get rid of these chronic coughs that they've had for years. And the way it works is basically like you have to prolong the amount of time that you go without coughing and just make it longer, and you got to sit there and train yourself every day not to cough. And if you feel like coughing, you take a sip of water and you keep struggling not to cough, and try to go a longer period of time without coughing. That's one way of retraining those neural pathways, and also perhaps helping to heal up this area in the throat that keeps getting irritated by the cough and is not properly healing. And there's a lot of other ways. So it's basically neural retraining is a big part of it, most likely. And part of it may be, ongoing vascular bed damage, spike protein, stuff like that needs to be eliminated. I don't know, without checking a microclot test and looking at spike antibody levels and a bunch of other stuff that may or may not help us figure out whether you have an underlying immune dysfunction, long COVID problem, or just a kind of like a software issue that needs to be updated. Cassie says, do you have anything new to try? My 15-year-old has had continuous migraines for 26 months since he contracted COVID. We've tried so many things and nothing helps. I would not use painkillers. That sounds terrible. I've had migraines before, and in my experience, painkillers are the wrong approach. It's just going to make the thing worse and harder to treat. So that would be the first thing to do. So it becomes a vicious cycle. The painkillers suppress the pain, but the body becomes more resistant to the painkillers, and therefore the pain gets worse. The underlying level of the pain, the average level of the pain goes up. The painkillers will disrupt the microbiome, and they'll create even like emotional and mental changes in the person, right? So they'll change the person's emotionally, lead to anger and sometimes depression, anxiety, other things. And so it's just, it's the wrong approach. It sounds like a pretty uncomfortable and terrible situation. I would go to try to address it comprehensively, a real, true, comprehensive approach. So check out the page with Hakeem Shabazz, and he'll fix up your son. You just got to be willing to do what he says. So mygotodoc.com/Hakim, Hakim. Check out the page and consult him, and he'll fix you up. Trace, it's you got to spend some time. You got to spend an hour, maybe 2 hours, really dig deep, figure out why this is happening, and address the mental, emotional, relationship, intimacy, toxic, nutrient, sun, sleep, stress, school, etc., everything, right? You got to address it all, pinpoint what the main problems are, and address those, and then he'll get better. So you got to do something different, right? So if you're ready to do something different, then go there, and we'll help you, and you'll get better. He'll get better. Tracy Pequeño says, there are months when I feel back to normal and months where I feel awful cognitive decline. Given the viral persistence theory hiding in some organs, let's say it's on my brain, does ivermectin help with that? So ivermectin doesn't pass through the blood-brain barrier, right? That's clear. I don't think most people have virus in their brain, but they could have viral persistence somewhere. So yeah, I do think ivermectin helps most people. But this up and down, right? You feel normal and then you feel terrible. This is most likely related to stress. And the key to getting better completely is to deal with that stress properly, not in an artificial way, but to deal with it naturally, the way it's meant to be dealt with. So, like if somebody starts yelling at you, you don't shoot them to get rid of the stress. You fix your relationship with them, right? So there's a right way and a wrong way of going about things. So if you do it in the right way, then the problem will be properly resolved, and so you got to deal with stress appropriately. Does it cross the blood-brain barrier? Yeah, ivermectin doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, but it can help in other ways. Diane says, what can help balance the gut out after COVID? Constipation is great. Yeah, I think it's the same question. Like I said before, mind-body medicine is really important for gut health. Tripla can help you get there initially. You might need some enemas along the way. You might need to exercise more. You might need to sleep more. You might need to de-stress. You might need, there's a lot of things that you might need. I don't know. I'd have to talk to you to be able to tell exactly. Is the hyperbaric chamber safe with grade 4 microclots? Yeah, there shouldn't be an issue, but I would start treating the microclots before going any further, right, before starting some other therapies. So I think a key for a lot of people is to start microclot treatment. And even though the grade may not change right away, that usually helps to put up with other treatments. If you feel worse with any treatment, then you need to dial down the treatment and not do so much of it, right? So if hyperbaric oxygen therapy makes you feel worse, you're doing too much for yourself at that time, right? Maybe you need to start with 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, less than an hour, or less pressure or whatever, and then gradually work your way back up. And you could just start with just oxygen outside of a chamber, right? Pure oxygen, instead of starting with a hyperbaric chamber. Just start with room pressure and 100% oxygen through our oxygen concentrator. I've had past thyroid cancer, also diagnosed with POTS, positive for mold toxicity, MCAS, fructose malabsorption, diagnosed with a hydrogen breath test, hypermobility, recently had a positive Cologuard screening, waiting to get a colonoscopy. My body is so dysregulated in so many ways. With all this going on, what would you recommend tackling first, and how? The first thing I think is always going, if you really wanted to know, it would be talking to you about what you believe about the nature of reality and about your childhood, and talking about your emotional health and your relationships and your intimacy and your lifestyle, and figuring out what toxins are there and what nutrients are missing. So go to mygotodoc.com/Hakeem. And again, this may seem complicated, but it's probably all actually pretty simple, right? So there's probably a taproot or two, there's 2, 3, 4 big roots that are manifesting as all of these seemingly separate problems. And so if you go straight to the source, then you can fix all of those manifestations. I ordered 1 bottle of conolidine. I hope it works good. Thanks for recommending it. Yeah, so this is a substance that seems very, very promising for pain. So if anyone has chronic pain as a bridge to properly addressing all the underlying root causes, again, I don't think Band-Aid approaches are best, regardless of how well they work. But as a bridge to keep you comfortable while you're addressing root causes, it can be helpful. What steps do you recommend people take who have had some of the COVID shots and want to detox as much as possible to minimize any future consequences? I'm wondering what your latest recommendations would be. What tests would be good to check? Supplements to use, lifestyle modifications, or other steps? Is a consult recommended to personalize it? Thanks so much for your time and effort. Yeah, consult would be definitely recommended. And again, the best consult that I can offer, either myself or Hakeem Shabazz, is available through mygotodoc.com/Hakeem. That's like a true, deep, healing, natural consult. HAKIM/HAKIM. Yeah, it's on the screen. So short of that, you could, if you're not interested in like really deep, approach to healing all the different aspects of your being, then you just want like a simple, straightforward protocol that's not going to work as well as that, then, microclot test, spike antibody level, maybe the Incel DX tests if you have enough money for them, and maybe some other tests that are available that can be done. So there's a whole panel of tests, right? It depends on how much money you have. If you have like $5,000 for tests, then we can do everything. We can just run all the tests. And if you have $500, then we can do a microclot test. So if you have $50 or something, then we can do a spike antibody level. And so it all depends on you and how certain you want to be, how deeply you want to check. Do you want to check your microbiome? Do you want to check your immune system? Do you want to check for VAIDS? Do you want to, and how, much granularity do you want in those tests? How advanced do you want those tests to be? And, there's different versions of some of the tests, the cheaper versions, the more expensive versions. So, on my blog at blog.mygotodoc.com, you'll find some of the past blogs have gone over, what tests to do. And you can go, I think you can go to labs.mygotodoc.com. Let me just double check that that's, labs, labs.mygotodoc.com. So instead of www.mygotodoc.com, it's labs, labs.mygotodoc.com. And you can see some information on various labs that you can run. So those can show signs of spike toxicity. I think if you had to just choose one, microclot test would probably be a good one, plus the spike antibody level, since it's very cheap. But there's a bunch of other ones that will probably be covered by insurance, though it's not guaranteed, and others that will definitely not be covered by insurance. So let's see. Let's go back to this. If you don't feel like there's any problem, I wouldn't necessarily start to take a bunch of supplements just assuming that there's a problem. It would be best to figure out if there's a problem. And most people have some problems and they're just not fully aware of them, right? And they may not be new problems, but you may have chronic older problems that were there even before the before the COVID shot. And those point in the direction that you need to go in order to build deep resilience to future exposures to spike protein. But assuming you do have a problem, either long COVID or we find some indication on labs that there's, some sort of dysfunction or some abnormality, then for dealing with microclots and getting rid of spike, nattokinase, serrapeptase, augmented NAC, quercetin, bromelain, nigella sativa, curcumin, dandelion, all these things are very helpful for a period of time. Lifestyle modifications just focus on really great sleep, optimize your sleep, which means a lot. You got to optimize your light environment and grounding and other things. Optimize food, just like become really religious about no seed oils ever. So basically just don't eat out anymore. And really great quality ingredients. And those are the main things. And then address anything, I guess, again, the most important things to address for people's health is your reason for living, what you believe about the nature of health and disease, why people get sick and how they get better, and your relationships, fix them up, and your, increase the intimacy in your life, address your emotional health, and address toxins and nutrients in general. Why am I getting higher morning fasting blood sugars, 106 to 116, while doing carnivore when plant-based it's in the 90s? So some people, carnivore may be stressful. So, in your case, you may be having, your body is under stress with carnivore. So I don't think, that it's really true that carnivore is optimal for everyone. It's probably great for some people and not great for other people. So Chris Masterjohn has an interesting tweet on this that, there could be a biochemical abnormality that you have, or not an abnormality, but just a, idiosyncrasy of your biochemistry that makes carnivore more difficult for your body to deal with. And so it's creating stress, and stress makes your blood sugar go up. So you might need to be plant-based, right? So you might do a lot better with plant-based and a lot less meat than somebody else. And some people may even do best with no meat. Not to say vegan, okay, but vegetarian. It's possible. So diet and everything is really individualized, and you may have a particular dietary response now that may go away later, and you may do better with meat at a certain other point in your life. So, we really got to look at the broader context, the entire situation, to understand what may be going on there. And for now, it seems like it's probably not helpful for you to be carnivore. And so you should, that may not mean getting rid of meat or it may not even mean that many plants, right? You might be able to find a happy medium where you add back some plants and your blood sugar comes down. And maybe not. Maybe you need to really be more plant-based instead of meat-based at this particular time, at least. Unnatural bruising and skin darkening with vaccine injury went away. Now back, year two, tests are all clear. Any thoughts? Um, so you probably got re-exposed to spike protein. I mean, that's the most likely thing. I don't know what you mean by tests all clear, right? Did you check microclots? Did you check a spike antibody level? Did you check, you know, in-cell DX tests, et cetera? There's a lot of things that you could have checked. Did you check lymphocyte subset panel? There's a lot of different things. So D-dimer, et cetera. I don't know what you checked. Are at-home blood sugar monitors as reliable as lab blood tests? No, they're like maybe up to 20% off. They are not that accurate. But if you're seeing a clear difference between 90s and 100 and 10, 116, 115, 100 in the low hundreds versus 90s, and it's like plant-based is 90s, meat is 115, plant-based is 90s, meat is 115. I mean, if there's a clear difference dichotomy there, then there is a difference, right? So if you keep testing, and every time you're on a plant-based diet, and every day it's in the 90s, 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 and then you're on a meat-based diet, and every day it's low hundreds, then there's probably a difference, right? If it's the same test, kit, it's the same thing both times, then there's probably an actual difference, right? So it's gonna be, they're not perfectly accurate, but yeah, a blood test is definitely better. But again, I think you're getting reliable information in terms of the difference between two different diets here. If it's consistent, if you check it multiple times, it's the same. So I wouldn't just check it once on each, I'd repeat it multiple times to make sure that there's an actual pattern there. Can you talk about quinolidine further? So I don't remember much about it. I just, somebody sent it to me and said, hey, take a look at this, and where can I get it? And so I think it's GDPR Labs or something. And it's a compound that I think it interacts with opioid receptors, perhaps, but not in the same way as regular opioids do. And it doesn't have side effects. It doesn't cause like the side effects that opioids cause. And it doesn't seem to have, any toxicity. So yeah, I could only find one place that makes it. I think it's GDPR Labs or something, but you'll find it if you go and search online. They seem, a little bit off-putting because it seems more like a marketing company decided to start selling a pain supplement, or a natural pain supplement. Plus, they sell a bunch of other stuff too. They have a particular way of marketing that's a little bit off-putting, but if you do have a chronic pain issue and you just want to try something different, then I would give it a shot and see what happens. But at the same time, I don't think it's helpful to rely solely on these kind of simplistic approaches to something like chronic pain. You should be focusing on mind-body medicine. Go and check out the Curable app, or the Lightning Process, or unlearnyourpain.com, or any of these places. That should be a real, really focus on doing that, and the pain will usually go away, or decrease significantly. So retrain your brain to not feel the pain and address underlying root causes. That's more important than just relying on a Band-Aid approach, taking one supplement. What do you recommend to help with breathing? I'm on an oxygen machine at times and have stiffness and difficulty walking since having COVID pneumonia 2 years ago. So breath work is really important. Buteyko breathing, Buteyko. Buteyko breathing, you can find it on YouTube. There's a bunch of different exercises. I think that will be really helpful in recovering breathing capacity. So you gotta train your body. You gotta ask your body. You gotta push your limit. It's just like training a muscle. It's the same when you're training anything. Your lungs have gotten kind of weak, and you can strengthen them again, right? So you have to make an effort to do that. You have to push yourself, and there's a little bit of struggle involved. And so exercise with oxygen therapy could also help, EWOT. And yeah, Turtlance, I think, was talking about the quinolidine. Yeah, so let us know if it works for you. But yeah, so exercise with oxygen therapy, just the regular oxygen therapy, an hour or two a day for 3-4 months straight, might be helpful. And again, it's like we got to figure out whether there's some physical problem or whether it's kind of more of a software kind of issue that needs to be redone, or if it's both, or what the approach should be specifically based on what's going on with you. If you've had any imaging, what did it show? Did you check a microclot test? Do we suspect that you have COVID, spike-related inflammation or microclotting still that needs to be dealt with or not? So all of these things can make a difference in the approach that's recommended. Is there evidence of like fibrosis in the lungs that needs to be reversed? So it really depends. Again, the most effective approach is a really comprehensive and deeply individualized approach. And the only place to get that is mygotodoc.com/Hakim, Hakim. And you can either choose to see me or Hakim Shabazz, but either way, we'll both be involved in the care of patients who come in through there. All right, everyone, thank you for watching. And it seems like people prefer the late nights to the midday because there's only 300 people watching. Still, it's great. Most of them are on X right now, but we get like 4 times more than this when I live stream from the other side of the world at like 10 or 11 p.m. at night. You guys need to sleep at night, okay? So maybe the people who are up all night are not here. So when they do show up later tonight, this message is for you guys. Please go to sleep at night. Don't stay up. All right, everyone, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.